Hi, Michele Vrabel. You are my guest today on the Beholder Beauty podcast, and I'm so excited for you to come on today and for my audience. Many of them probably know you, but the ones that don't, they're in for a treat and a pleasure because Michele, is a writer who's writing a book right now, and she will be telling us more about that in a moment. And she's also a podcaster of Old School, which is a wonderful podcast, and it's definitely one that you should check out. And I think that it definitely reflects with the Beholder Beauty community because it's kind of what the Beholder Beauty community is about, how to walk it out with each other and the conversations between all kinds of different women about where they're at in life, where they're going, what God's done in their life, and we talk about God, talk about beauty, and we talk about difficult things. Just mainly to show others that they're all alone and that we can all kind of join in on the conversation together and stir up good words for God's kingdom. Absolutely. And so we're going to start with Michele telling us about herself.
Oh, I'm 61. This could be a while. No.
That is fine. I want to know all about you. I want to know your story. I mean, we're in compelled training together on social media, but I want to know your story.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because on social media, I don't lie and I don't use filters. I have a lot of people sometimes when they meet me in person go, "Oh, you actually look like," and I'm not sure what that means. So I don't pull at that thread. I'm just happy. I think that means that I look authentic. But that a lot of times our friends or the people that we get to know on social media think that's the entirety of our life, what we put out there, as opposed to really the day in and day out. And a lot of people don't want to hear about, okay, I'm a bookkeeper. I jokingly call it being a bean counter. And one of my writing coaches, she was so funny. She goes, "What does that mean? Do you have an abacus?" No. It was like just so funny. And so, yeah, I was born in the Midwest. I moved to Arizona when I was 16, lived here for the longest time, and decided to strike out on my own and lived in California, then lived in Hawaii, then back to Arizona, then California, and then back to Arizona. And I was saved at a revival, a really cool evangelism revival in Michigan when I was 14 years old. And that was such an amazing experience. And what I had been through to that point in my life, I had been through physical abuse by my biological father. I've been through sexual abuse by a relative. We just had walked so many things. That is what my book, Butterfly Stitches, is about, is that where the Lord was at and how all of that works together as I walk that out. And my first book is a memoir, so it's covering all of those things. And then it leads into what the recovery journey looked like for me, the healing journey. But anyway, I end up back in Arizona after several prodigal runs. You and I talked about that on my podcast, that about 10 years in there because of some things that had happened to me. And I thought I was wise, that I was going to control things. And if I went on too many dates and somebody said, "I love you," I wasn't going to have that because everyone up to that point who had said they loved me lied. And so I just wasn't going to give anybody the opportunity. And I just thought I was something. I had a hold of it. I had it in control. Yeah. It's a miracle I'm still alive after that period. And so back to Arizona, my grandmother had died and my mother needed me back here. And I didn't right away feel his calling back to him and back to the church and what have you. But when I was dating my ex-husband, well, he wasn't my ex-husband at the time, we weren't equally yoked when we got married. And I didn't even pray about marrying him, so I can't blame the Lord. I can't say that man you gave me because he wasn't the man God had for me, but he worked all of that out for good because I had my beautiful daughter who I call Peanut. And right before we were getting married, even after a bunch of infidelity, even before the wedding bell, I started feeling him really like chasing after me, really pulling at my heart. And I started looking for a church nearby where we lived and found fabulous church. I would go every Sunday and he was freaking out. He thought I was gonna leave him because he didn't go. And we got married and a couple of years in, and he started going. And actually, I'd say probably on the cusp of us getting a divorce in just by how our relationship was going. Not necessarily infidelity, although I'm sure it was going on at that time. And so my journey there, and about 10 years ago, the Lord tapped me to write a book. I was in the middle of a Bible study of Isaiah. We were dipping into Esther, and I kind of formulated it off of those concepts, the concepts of Esther and the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, what she walked through for her, as the movie calls it, One Night with the King, and for her such a time as this moment. And so I was putting my book together in those kind of segments, and then just wasn't doing very much with it. I was dragging my feet because I thought he asked the wrong person. My daughter is literally going to college for a degree in English and creative writing. She has a book and a poetry book already ready to launch. And so I was like dragging my feet. Well, a couple years ago, I found Compel, and I was like, okay, this is giving me some tidbits and showing me what I really didn't know and how unready I was. So I walked through that, did a couple of book proposals, and learned that I wasn't ready and didn't know what I was doing completely. And then the Lord just really impressed upon me. And I was walking in concert and in relationship with a bunch of friends who had mentors, who had coaches. I was following people online who were motivational and inspirational for me. And some of them have relationships with the Lord, some have a different faith, but they all, that common thread of surrounding themselves with people who you're going to, pull up. So actually had sent an email out, or yes, an email to Tracy to ask her what like all of her process was. And then the Lord, bizarre divine appointment, somehow crossed my path with the young man who books Bob and Kim, their coaches. I don't even remember how. It was somehow on social media because had no earthly clue that he did that. I would have thought somebody at his level just be done with that, to go spend time with his grandkids. So he sets it up, and a year ago, January, right about now, we are off to the races, and they were so incredible. But I mean, Bob does these high flying half-hour calls. Kim gets my words, and we have this hour-long meeting. And I feel right now, and I think she would say the same thing, and he does too, but even more so her, that I have a friend. I have a new friend. I have somebody who is pressing into me and my life and wants me to succeed because she feels she just says it every time we get together. This is good work. This needs to happen. So I find myself here, and Bob tells me, "Oh, now you have to do podcasts." And I was like, "Okay, let me go figure out what I need to do." All you need is a computer with Zoom on it. And then he started spouting off software to help you. Well, he has this team of people, and these softwares and these platforms are all doing it for free because he's him. So his assistants are adorable. They were all telling me, this is what you need to do. And I was like, okay. But he was like, I'm your first guest. And I go, okay, let me get this together and then I'll come. And he goes, no. Is Wednesday a good day for you to record? And I was like, I have no earthly clue. So we were off to the races. That was May. June, Bob's episode dropped, and here we are. I'm coming up on my second season starting, and I'm going to have Kim, my other writing coach, be my first guest on that season. And I couldn't be happier. Then he springs on me that I need to have speaking engagements. Well, I'm an introverted extrovert. I know I seem chatty when I'm like one-on-one, or my friends would say, I don't believe you, because I'm chatty with them, but I know them. And I don't think it's that I have a fear that the crowd will reject me. I just want to know that I'm doing it right, and that I'm taking this 75,000 word story and I'm landing the plane well, the way the Lord wants me to, for it to work together for good. So we're working that out. But I did have a speaking engagement in Hawaii at my brother's church, and I have another offer that might lead into a series of speaking engagements. So I'm pretty excited. So that is kind of like really, you know, from the space station overview of my life. But that's where I'm at. And I've probably had the last year, the best year of my life outside of the year my daughter was born.
I love that so much. And I see that in you because a lot of your walk and a lot of your advice to people is basically listen to God and take one step at a time. And it's so true. I started my podcast about the same way. I Instagram chatted you and some of my other friends, just trying to figure it out. And you know what the interesting thing is? I was so second guessing and doubting myself, which means doubting God, of course, that when I finally talked to this one podcast manager who she, she does exactly what I do, maybe even less. And here I am with less, so that it's all about trust, right?
I mean, it is funny. I've said to you before that I've had other people reach out and go, "How did you do this? How did you start? What equipment did you get?" And I'm seriously, I mean, I do have this microphone that
Yes.
I will utilize and plug in. It only works with my computer. I don't have the cord that gets it to work, like if I have an interview situation. So there's sometimes it's my microphone, sometimes it's not. It depends on if I'm using my camera versus Zoom. And I bought a really cool camera called Lumina just because my laptop camera was horrible. I mean, I already look like an apparition even with this, but that's just because I have bad lighting back here. I got to fix that. But really, I mean, Zoom, which I pay whatever I pay for because I have the Pro, like $15 a month. And, as long as I keep that all incorporated, I send it to my producer. I do use a app called Descript to get a transcript, and it will AI print my show notes, which are way better than mine. I'm like, yes. And that's really it. Now, mind you, I don't have a million people downloading yet, but I think that's true of everybody. I don't think anybody out of the gate. I have seen people like Joe Rogan and Lewis Howes and different people say that when they look back at their first season or their first couple episodes, they just stopped because they needed to learn some certain things. And I'm not going to say I don't care because I want to make sure that I'm honoring God with what I'm doing. But I think that I'm taking the steps he's asking me to and I'm being obedient. And when it happens, it'll happen because that's when he expected it to.
Well, I think you do a great job.
Oh, you're so
I was Michelle's guest, and you made me feel very comfortable. Okay, sharing some heavy things and basically working it out together, but also, the wonderful thing that yes, God does use all things for his good. And that is such a wonderful promise for us to just hang on to. So I do have a question that I want to ask you. And as part of Beholder Beauty, we do get into some beauty. And so I wanted to ask you, what is your beauty secrets? You said for those of you who don't know Michelle, 61, and
61. Yeah, I do acknowledge that.
and she's glowing. She glows, and she's a natural beauty. And I know a lot of that is what's inside. Of course, because that's what all Beholder Beauty is about. Is about our inside, and develop our beauty inside out. And so, if you would like to share any of
My secrets.
yeah,
Well, I would love to. I've never, my whole life, considered myself like beauty. And I know that's a me thing. That's not a God thing because he created us beautifully and wonderfully. And the bulk of anyone's beauty is their spirit. If you're just a critical spirit, if you're just a negative spirit, when I was younger, like in my 20s and had less wrinkles, I would go out and I wasn't always the best looking of my group. And that's such a eye of the beholder, but nonetheless. But I was, and probably consistently could say I was the most fun. And not because I did naughty things, but because I was just fun. I just seized the moment. I like to dance. I would have people come across the room to talk to me and say, "You just look like you're fun." And I was like, "Yep, I am." So all of that, I think that happiness, that joy is a big thing that exudes. But definitely as you get older, my genetics and then just things that happen to us, we lose collagen. My hair has been completely gray since I was 26, so I get my hair colored. I have a group of people. I call them my fantasy me team. It's like a fantasy football team, but they are all people who provide some service for me. At one point, I had a personal trainer on there. I have a hairstylist. She's the QB because she's the one that has to keep the gray away and deal with all of that for right now. I mean, I'm not going to do a bait and switch on the dating apps, but while you're dating and you're 61, you don't need to look like you're 80. So that's the thing. I don't put filters on. This is me. But I will say I took my lashes extensions off recently because I was doing a little bit more of a detox. Just expense wise during tax season, I just took them. But I do have a lash extension girl, nails and pedicure. But for my face, it is a combination of my face and my skin, of things that I take internally. I do take collagen every day, and you have to make sure that it's in the proper form. I do take a supplement that has hyaluronic acid as its base, which is a building block for collagen. I can see if I miss even a week of that supplement, it is so awesome for our skin because my genetics, if you saw my mom, and now she was a smoker and a caffeine drinker and stuff, so she had a lot of wrinkles, but I have that, genetics, but also, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm not going to do things that are terrible to my skin. I wash my face in the morning and the evening before I go to bed. I don't just put on cream for the sake of putting it on or put on the most expensive thing out there. I do my drill down and I read the white papers and the scientific research on what I put in or on my body so that I understand what's happening. Like I have a lot of people who are critical of me because I do use fillers and I have used it's called Dysport. It's like a Botox. Well, the Dysport is not systemic, so it's local to where it goes in. Is it a toxin? Absolutely. But again, it's not a body-wide situation. And then the filler is hyaluronic acid, which is a building block of collagen. And when you have that put in, it calls collagen, which is our number one protein, to the location. Almost like if you have an injury, collagen is the EMTs that come to you. So it comes there, you start to generate your own collagen. I mean, they say that it's supposed to only be good for X period of time. And my injector girls all tell me that my stuff lasts longer, considering I laugh so much and work the areas that they are, which is supposed to make it dissipate. But it lasts forever for me because I do all the supporting things. I clean my skin. I take things that aren't toxic in as food or that are good to my good bacteria system and all of that. So those are I have people tell me all the time they don't think I look 61 now. I look a little frightening with this lighting here today, but for the most part, those are my things. I don't do anything dramatic. It's simple. Cleanse, tone, moisturizer, and then making sure that what we're doing for the underpinnings is good too.
As make bars, I confer with what you are saying. Now, for me personally, I've never used any fillers or anything like that, but I have different genetics. I think if you are offsetting it by eating healthy and the rest of the stuff you're doing is very healthy, like you said, if there was any toxic stuff, hopefully that wouldn't register. But I think the only issue that some people fall into in that area, and especially if you're not a believer, is that can become its own
Idol.
maybe idol. Yeah. And also too, it will never be enough. That's why you see people that all of a sudden they look monsters because it's never enough. And in the wellness industry, it's promoted that we can create like radiant makeup, radiant glow on our face, and everything by our lifestyle. And you can create health by lifestyle, but as Christians, we can create our beauty identity is not separate from Christ. He's the one that creates our radiance. He's the one that creates our confidence. And that, I think, is key there to keep us from possibly falling into it being an idol, especially as you say, as we get older, because like probably my hair's due for a dye right now, but I put like a natural vegetable wash on it now. And I didn't always. I mean, I've had bleached hair, I've had purple hair, I've had I've had all the hair color. But then I started worrying about the chemicals. And so I will do the vegetable dye one. And I recently was going to go back to my hairstylist to have it done how she does it, because I do love it. But I just thought, no, I can't. I don't want to go back to that right now. And not to say I would ever. I think that as long as we're intentional and aware of what we're, like as far as our skincare, our water, our food, but not to at the same time be too crazy about it, because some of it's perspective, like, okay, example, if you do coffee or tea, you probably want like it to be really good, right? But like when I watch those old movies and it's a Western, they're on the campfire and they pull out their coffee, that probably was really awesome, probably really harming. But that it probably was amazing right at that moment because it was what they had, right? So I'm just saying some of it's perspective. We're very blessed to have so many options and choices and really good, pure foods and ways of life that we can.
And I've absolutely done a drill down and do cellular healing. I did a master class with this Dr. Cole, and the top 5 toxins, bad oils, alcohol, anxiety, and beauty and cleaning products. And I have really done a sweep through all of those things. Am I perfect at any one of them? No. And I don't think anybody can be, because we don't have a control over our environment. We don't have control over we can get control over our water supply, but it's not an inexpensive thing. I can control mostly what I drink, but trying to control a whole house system and different things like that, those can be hard. But understanding that while I may not be able to reach perfection, I can do everything I can. I don't mind having a glass of wine with dinner or something, but I'm logical enough to understand the things I can do prior to that, the things I can do surrounding that in support of my system. The same with financially, these things. Like, I'm a bookkeeper. I barter with my injector girls. Fillers are not inexpensive. But I'm not a nut job like, "Oh my god, if I can't have them, I'll be like this or that," but I barter. I do their bookkeeping, so I get this for free. And same with my hair. So these are and then when I have lash extensions on, I don't wear mascara and I barely put on a little bit of blush. And for somebody my age to be able to get away with that, so I try not to have anything like it's mandatory or I'm gonna die. The only thing that I would die without is Jesus. The rest of it, I think we should take care of ourselves, and I think we should do certain things. But you're right, we can reach, like, extremes. We can reach extremes of apathy and lethargy and not do anything, in the name of, "You ought to just love me the way I am," versus going over here and some poor guy takes you out on a date, and then the first time you, like, go back to one of each other's houses and they realize everything you was a filter or was fake. So there is a healthy middle ground where we acknowledge our beauty in Christ and in our Creator, and then we can do, as they say jokingly, put a little paint on the barn.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with beautifying yourself and taking care of yourself. It's putting it into the right frame. Like, who is it for? Is it for God? It's not for attention. It's not for because we feel less than ourselves or we feel less valued or we're insecure or
Unbeautiful if we don't.
yes, or yes, exactly. Like you say, you don't use filters. I don't use them either. I don't even know if I kind of know how to.
Okay. So, yes, that's probably even bigger because my daughter just laughs at me. She goes, "How come you don't have Snapchat?" And I'm like, "Because I don't need it." And then she, like, does all these fun filters, and she'll do real photos of herself too, but I'm like, "You know what, baby girl? Mom doesn't wanna pull a bait and switch on some poor guy."
Well,
I am who I am, and I think I'm beautifully and wonderfully made.
you are. You definitely are.
You're so sweet.
Like I said, it is a very healthy balance because we are physical beings. We do live in the physical world. We are spiritual beings. And it's part of our faith walk. We have to bring everything under the God lens and put it there. God wants us to be joyful, to celebrate, to live, to dance, to pray, all those things. Because if we don't recognize that side, like what you just said is so true, we can turn apathetic. How about during the lockdown?
You wear your pajamas all day. Did you brush your teeth? I've read other Emily Barnes, I think is her name. She does these Christian books about time management and organization and things like that. And she says the worst thing you can do is stay in your pajamas when you get up and you have some projects that you need to do. You need to get up like you got a purpose. You need to actually put everything on and shoes and then go after it. I was like, that is so true because we can just get sucked into, I'm, feeling that one right now.
So I think you've talked about the first part in the first book, but let's talk about where your second book takes us.
Okay. I was told by my writing coaches that originally my book was it was a book. And once we started talking and they started working with the word craft of it, it just led more to the first one being a memoir and laying out because it was a lifetime of whatever form of abuse that took. And while in the memoir, it is alluded to for sure, my relationship with Christ. But the second book is where it being really the drill down and taking a look at it and talking with everybody about how my walk through it went and how I don't believe that people might use a different terminology for it, but I don't believe very many people who walk through the same kind of abuse that I have and that are alive and not, miserable or still staying in the victim lane couldn't see that this may have a thread for them as well. Because yes, there are tons of books out there about abuse, but my healing journey, I believe, started at the time my abuse started. I honestly believe the Lord talks about how he was leaving the comforter when he left, when he was resurrected, after the ascension. And the Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit came on all the disciples and so forth. Well, they talk about within the Christian community that young kids aren't held accountable until what? People guess about it, saying like 12 or whatever, when they can grasp the true concepts of salvation. But I honestly believe that he isn't not with us until we're 12 or something. I believe that we have that comforter, he created our little minds and our little souls and our little hearts. And he had such an affinity and love for the little kids that I honestly believe one of the most memorable beatings I took was when I was 2 years old and I had lost a shoe and I was beaten pretty badly. I have damage on this side of my face because of it. And I recall after my father threw me by one arm up onto my bed and then saw him as he was exiting the door. In my mind, I don't know that I could formulate the word evil or I could formulate the, God. But I looked at him walking out and in my mind, I can picture it just right now again. I thought, he's just bad. And it's him. It did not occur to me, nor did it ever occur to me through any abuse I experienced that I did something to make that happen ever. And that's unheard of. And people could say that can't possibly be true, but it is. And I feel it's because his presence was there. He made it known to me. And we have to be receptive. Like if we immediately create a defense mechanism that closes him out in any other form of healing, well, then you're right. Somebody may look back on that and go, that's not fair. You couldn't possibly have had that, and I didn't. I think we all had that possibility as we were walking those trials. I think it's a matter of whether the connection is made. But if we are alive and we have walked through trauma, which is 100% of the population, then I believe that you can, at the very least, look back now and see that healing and that comforting and take hold of it. You can take hold of it and you can lay claim to it. And that is where the second book just dives in a little deeper.
I love that so much. And that is so powerful. And that will help so many people because it's absolutely true. Because when I was telling you my story, as that little girl, my poem is Jesus and praying during it all, and just that I was the one who thought it was perhaps my fault. But looking back, I see, like you just said, that it wasn't, and that God was there with me the whole time through every little thing. And then that helped me understand that it wasn't. There was nothing. You're a child, that's what I.
It's the evil of those people. And we have that free will to choose those, you know.
Mhm. But I think a book like yours could make that choice possible. Like if for somebody who doesn't know that or whatever, like say if I was a little girl, say I'm in my young adult, like say I'm in my 20s now, I'm at college, and now I'm really acting out because of the things that have I've never dealt with them properly, right? So if I come across your book, I would be able to go, oh, this is what, and not spend up to, you know, 50 years before I
20, 30 years thinking, why did God leave me? Or why didn't he, even if you don't believe in him, why didn't he intercede? And
Yeah.
I don't call it being religious. I have a relationship with Christ. I have a faith worldview. And I just never found, and it's not that they're wrong, I just never found the churchy answers or the theological terminology and the nomenclature helpful. I actually had someone standing next to me when I was in my teenage years say, well, Jesus had a hold of your hand the whole time you were being molested. Now, did he leave me alone? Did he walk away from me? No. But to a teenager to say something like that would be appalling. So we have to
Right.
understand the character of God and how he works in us and through us and what has happened in the world to make us come to this place in the first place. But it was devastating for somebody to do that. So I've always been somebody who just wants people to understand my Jesus without messing him up, without trying to make him something he's not to other people. And if you don't get the peace that you have the right thing to say, I think we need, that's where that verse, be quick to listen, comes from.
Absolutely. We're imperfect people. That was one of the biggest, I guess, lessons when I started going back to church again. And there was a disappointment there where and it really affected me because one of the girls there confided in me that she was, one of the elders was molesting her. Okay. And we reported it, and my husband did, and they didn't want to do anything about it. They thought it was, their solution was to kind of just put her aside. And so we left that trip because of that reason, because it was just so, especially with what I've been brought up, it was so heartbreaking to allow that sort of
It's
thing.
egregious, not acceptable.
It's, it's not. And it's definitely something that needs to be addressed properly, like when anything like that happens. But what I learned from that is that didn't stop me from going to another show. What it told me was what I didn't know when I was 16 is we're imperfect people. Back then, I just thought they were hypocrites because I thought, right, the person who did that to me was supposed to be religious hypocrite, right? And so therefore, all don't want to be part of that. And that's not really what it is. It's more imperfect people. And no matter where you go, there. And I do think that anybody that behaves that way possibly is not a Christian.
Right.
They're just
I
wolves.
mean, we all have the propensity, we're born with a sin nature, and we all have the propensity to be evil. I have my own layers of my choices that
Yeah.
somebody else could sit on the side and say is just as evil as what took place to me. So that is where I find my best foundation of forgiveness as well, because it has nothing to do with what the other people were doing. It has everything to do with me not being the container that carries that kind of bitterness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that was a big part of it is forgiving and And I don't have to say I'm at peace with all that. I've forgiven. You don't have to carry them. I mean, God doesn't want us to carry them for years because injustice is done, but God is the God of justice. And I know that now. I know that everybody who, like if somebody hurts me, I'm like, I don't need to hurt you back. I can forgive you. I can
And
give
it
you
says way more
but
about what's going on inside them than it does us anyway.
exactly. And they have to answer to him, not me. And I feel perfect in that he is my defender and that because back to that one story I told you, I think it was on your podcast last year was restored to the company that happened at. And so, or you listening, that it's another story, another time, and you have to listen to Michelle's podcast.
We'll call it episode 1 and episode
To
2.
get the backstory on this. I'm saying it, that God is a restorer, and he does restore us, and he does redeem us. Um, and even if it's not here in in this lifetime, it does come. That the joy. Okay, we have come to our time, our end of the show today, our gathering today with each other, and this has just been a wonderful conversation. Really, I mean, we've covered some really heavy things, but also some um, practical things we can do in our daily life as far as our bodies go. And so, is there anything else that you want to tell us about what's going on in your life? I think we've covered a lot, and we'll have all your, where you can reach Michelle. That will all be in the show notes. But I totally follow her podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple, YouTube.
It's on like 8 platforms, and the only video is YouTube, but yeah. And so, yeah, any engagement whatsoever, I absolutely love it. And yeah, I can't think of anything additional other than buy my book. No.
Exactly. But to buy her book first, sign up. It's really exciting to see what God's doing in your life and to get to know a little bit more about your journey and your book because you said on social media you don't always share the whole story. And so you have such a story to share that will help a lot of people. And I'm so excited to see it roll out because now I know the backstory and so everybody listening, get in on the backstory so that we can move forward, Michelle, on your title.
Butterfly Stitches.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being my guest. Thank you so much for being my
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This was fun.
Yeah, I had a great time. Both
Me too.
senses.
I think every one of our stories is definitely going to help somebody.
As I always say, it's not just our story. It's our story with him. So it's a package deal.
I love that. So I wanted to pray from my hair over your book. Dear Heavenly Father, I want to pray right now over Michelle and her book, and that will carry on her journey, which is your journey, to glorify you and to help people who have been through and who hasn't, but been through trauma, been through adversity, all those things. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, honey. I appreciate it.
Well, it was so wonderful meeting you in real life and sort of real life.
Exactly. All right, honey. God bless you.
Okay, God bless you. Bye-bye.